Controversial opinion. The most harrowing distress of American society today is horrendous breakups. I mean, who could forget Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, Kanye and Kim K, Taylor Swift and everyone? But they all pale in comparison to the roughest split ever, Jezebel and Ahab's. The story goes that Jezebel, a pagan princess, nefariously seduced King Ahab of Israel into the ultimate torment, marriage. In result, Jezebel spread her diabolical worship throughout the kingdom, now queendom, and decimated those who opposed her. In other words, Jezebel is a charming, successful politician, my role model. Yet, as punishment for her crimes of political astuteness, she was branded a prostitute, later pushed to death for her unholy allure. Evidently, her relationship had its downfalls. For at its heart, Jezebel's slip is a cautionary tale, depicting the risks and ramifications of unchecked female sexuality. One that I'll keep in mind if I ever run for president. Because unfortunately, while Jezebel's plight may seem like ancient history, I mean her story, women's sexuality remains misrepresented, vilified. We still shame women, from the streets to Congress, for being autonomous sexual agents. Professor Jennifer Lawless of the University of Virginia warns that our demonization of women's sexuality undermines their credibility and experience. Therefore, ultimately, it strips women of their agency, binding them to stifling discrimination. So today, let's battle the demonization of women's sexuality by demystifying its causes, uncloaking its dehumanizing harms, before finally exorcising demonization through some solutions. So question, what was the hardest aspect of Jezebel's political career? The ground. Apparently her allure made an impact, because like Jezebel's, modern women's exclusion from our societal narrative obstructs their ability to define their sexuality. You see, those who construct our narrative, our journalists, filmmakers, politicians, are predominantly men. In fact, a 2020 UN study found that only 24% of people heard in media are women. Stories craft our reality. Thus, it's impossible to rewrite our demonized perception of women's sexuality when the pen is ripped from their hands, or are vilified when they wrestle it back. Remember when Cardi B released WAP? A descriptive ballad about her excitement to perform the devil's tango? She was excoriated, even by congressional candidates, such as Deanna Lorraine, for setting women back 100 years. Yeah. Even though, as affirmed by The Wire, only 20% of Billboard charters are written by women, and more than 92% of charters are about sex, women are shamed for expressing sexuality. Shame transcends pop culture, as our male-dominated society characterizes women's sexuality for them, in spite of them. We conclude that divorced from marriage and motherhood, women's sexuality is sinful, thereby reinforcing the Madonna whore complex, which compartmentalizes women into two categories: the respected and the shamed. Usher exemplifies this complex in his hit single, Yeah, that exclaims, "Want a lady in the streets but a freak in the sheets." That was celebrated with a Grammy. Yeah. So men arbitrate the boundaries of virtue and vice for women. And this entitlement persists because, as noted by Penn State College of Medicine, in our society for women, sex is inherently shameful. Thus, we construe women's character through our virgin-vamp dichotomy. It's what the 2020 Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient did when he accused a Georgetown law student of being a prostitute because she supported birth control. Our obsession with controlling the narrative of women's sexuality dismisses and taints their stories. Fundamentally, demonizing women's sexuality undermines their humanity as it denies their personhood and bodily agency. Take Jezebel's sister from another mister, Cleopatra, who allegedly wielded her sexuality to cripple mighty Roman emperors. Upon her eventual overthrow, the Romans rewrote her story to remember Cleopatra not by her statescraft, but by other attributes, painting her as an inhuman seductress. Today, just like Miss Cleo, women's stories are reduced, as psychologist Dr. Fredrickson alerts, to their sexuality over their human characteristics. Therefore, when women appear to violate our rigid ideals of a respectable woman, we deem them subhuman and become apathetic to their abuse. This mindset sustains rape culture, an environment where sexual harassment and violence is normalized. It's normalized when a female debater, Anna McCarthy, was told by male debaters at a tournament she could win if she opened her legs. Normalized when a peer told me, "You're useless, but at least you know how to undo a zipper," and the room burst into laughter. Normalized when after 15-year-old Ratea Parson was slut-shamed for being raped, then killed herself, her assailants received 0 jail time. This normalization precipitates a sexual assault to occur every 68 seconds in the US, according to the RAINN network, meaning at the end of this round, more than 60 people, daughters, sisters, friends, will be violently dehumanized, scarred with an inescapable "me too." Yet that scar is not the only trauma that arises from vilifying women's sexual autonomy. Sarah McClelland, UM psychologist, explains through the term intimate justice that our distorted perception of sexual agency skews our policies. Regardless if you support or oppose the impending Supreme Court ruling on reproductive rights, their decision could allow states to impose intimate justice. States like Texas, my home, whose SB8 law permits citizens to sue anyone that obtains an abortion after 6 weeks of pregnancy. The legal architect, Jonathan Mitchell, justified the law, declaring women can control their reproductive lives by refraining from sexual intercourse. Continence is not a substitute to bodily liberty, and treating it like it is has deadly repercussions. Repercussions named Rebecca Bell, a 17-year-old girl from Indiana who, to avoid ostracization, had an underground abortion and died alone. So how do we terminate the repetition of such fatal herstory? We must exorcise demonization by promoting meaningful representation and advocating for sexuality education. Firstly, we have to listen to women when they define sexuality on their own terms. Whenever I received ballots about how this speech was misguided and unnecessary, I thought of Jezebel and all the women since who've never had control over their stories, whose contributions are disregarded due to demonization. Platforms like this, such as inclusive school curriculums, are vital to ensuring such women's voices are heard for what they are: historical, not hysterical. But we all have to amplify this effort by reforming the language we use to define women today. So the next time someone asserts how so-and-so is a slut or a prude, critique their binary ideology that deprives so-and-so of her story and agency. Inclusion, though, will not alone exorcise this pervasive problem, as a majority of young people continue to receive sex ed akin to that in Mean Girls. Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die. This abstinence-based rhetoric has misguided generations about a very beautiful part of being human. To dispel harmful mythology, we need comprehensive sexuality education, in which youth are educated about the social and political aspects of sexuality. This education, as applauded by the Journal of Adolescent Health, empowers youth to shape the lives they desire free from shame by promoting discourse. Because whether women express their sexuality by bopping to WAP or Taylor Swift's breakup ballads, their choice should not be shamed. So, if today's journey was uncomfortable, then I'm glad, because it means you confronted the sexual demonization that fuels inequality. Now, let's resist the fallacious lore that's created around women like Jezebel, Cardi B, and Cleopatra. Instead, let's look deeper to see and hail who these women truly are. Not demons, but queens.